Hello, dear audience. My name is Yaroslav Golovko, and today our focus is on the topic that many learners of English find quite complex and often confusing and ask many questions about it. So the topic is relative clauses. And let's begin discussing it with the definition. So, relative clauses are introduced by relative pronouns who, which, whose, that, or relative adverbs where, when, why. We use relative clauses to identify the preceding noun in the main clause. So, relative clauses in this case are very similar to adjectives in their function. That is, they modify or identify nouns, but the adjectives structurally come before nouns, giving extra information about them. Unlike them, relative clauses come after nouns, and they come immediately after the nouns that they identify. So, we use who or that instead of subject pronouns I, you, he, and so on to refer to people. So if we want to give the extra information, the identifying information about a person, and we want to use a relative clause for this, we must use either the pronoun who or the pronoun that in order to begin our relative clause. Let's view the examples. The girl, she lives next door, that is, the girl lives next door, is from India. The girl who lives next door is from India. So all we need to do is to replace the personal pronoun she, which refers to a person, a girl, with the relative pronoun who, or replace it with another relative pronoun, which is that. The girl that lives next door is from India. One more example. John was a man. He, John, that man, made jewels. So John was a man who made jewels. John was a man that made jewels. He is a personal pronoun that refers to a man, a person, and it must be substituted with the relative pronoun who or that in order to make a relative clause that would modify the noun man. We use which or that instead of subject pronoun it to refer to things, objects, and animals. So in English, animals are treated as objects, so that's why they are replaced with the personal pronoun it when we need to refer to animals. I have a computer. It works very fast. So it refers to computer, a thing. In order to combine these two sentences as a main clause and a relative clause, we need to change the pronoun it to which or that. I have a computer which works very fast. I have a computer that works very fast. One more example. The horse, it won the race, is black. It refers to the horse. The horse which won the race is black. So we have replaced the personal pronoun it with a relative pronoun which. The horse that won the race is black. So that works equally to which. So as you have probably noticed, that is a universal relative pronoun. It can be used instead of who, the relative pronoun referring to a person, or which, the relative pronoun referring to objects and things. We use whose instead of possessive pronouns, my, your, his, her, their, our, and so on. with people or things in order to show possession. It must be followed by a noun. So whose is a universal pronoun, so you don't need to pay attention if you are speaking about a person or a thing. If you want to combine two sentences, one of which refers to the previous one as in a possessive case. So let's view the examples to understand it clearer. That's the man. The man's car was stolen. That's the man whose car was stolen. So originally his is a possessive pronoun. Car is the thing that belongs to the man. So car is the man's possession, and we need a possessive pronoun in order to replace the word the man. So the man's car was stolen, his car was stolen. And if we want to turn the second part into a relative clause, we just need to change his to whose. That's the man whose car was stolen. Another example with a thing. I drive a car, its color is red. So the pronoun its is a possessive pronoun for a thing that refers to a thing. A car is a thing. Now, I drive a car whose color is red is the resulting relative clause from its color is red. So you have noticed that whose is a universal possessive relative pronoun. So if there is a possessive relationship between a noun and a relative clause, whose is a universal possessive pronoun in this situation. We use relative adverb when to refer to time after nouns, where to refer to place, and why to refer to reason. Relative adverbs must be followed by the subject of the relative clause. So, indeed, when modifies or identifies the relative clause that starts with when identifies nouns that mean time periods or points in time. As in this example, 2001 was the year when they went on a cruise. The word year denotes a point in time or maybe a period of time. We use the relative pronoun when in order to identify it with the relative clause. But we need such a relative clause which will have its own subject, and the subject is they. If there is no subject, this is grammatically incorrect. You cannot say 2001 was the year when went on a cruise. You always need to have a subject. Garage is a building where cars are kept. Building is a reference to a place. So if in our relative clause we have a subject and we have it, so the word cars is its subject, we are free to use the word where in order to begin our relative clause of place. Garage is a building where cars are kept. His exam result is the reason why my friend is happy. So we have the word reason, and it works as a collocation in English. So if you want to begin your relative clause with the relative pronoun why, it's very, very common that the noun that this relative clause will identify is going to be the word reason. So reason why is like a collocation. His exam result is the reason why my friend is happy. And we have our subject of relative clause, which is the phrase my friend. So the noun friend makes the subject, which allows us to use the relative pronoun why. Now, in relative clauses, we can omit relative pronouns. And the keyword is can, because there is no need to omit them. It's possible to leave them in place. And there are opposite cases when the relative pronoun cannot be omitted. So let's explore such cases. We do not omit the relative pronoun when it is the subject of the relative clause. That's to say, when there is no noun or subject pronoun between the relative pronoun and the verb. Let's view example in order to see how this works. I met a girl that is from Japan. So we have the relative pronoun that, and following it we have the verb of the relative clause, and the verb is. And between these two words there is no other word which is a noun or a subject pronoun. There is no subject, right? So no noun or pronoun between that and is makes it so that we cannot cross the word that. I met a girl that is from Japan, and you cannot say I met a girl is from Japan. This will be a mistake. This would be a mistake. We can omit the relative pronoun when it is the object of the relative clause. That's to say, when there's a noun or subject pronoun between the relative pronoun and the verb. So an example can clarify this for us. That's the hat that Michael bought last week. We are trying to identify the word hat in this example, and the relative clause begins with that, and the verb of this relative clause is bought. But between the relative pronoun that and the verb bought, we have a subject of relative clause, which is Michael. So in the cases when we have this subject, the relative pronoun becomes the object of the relative clause and can be omitted or crossed out. So we can say, that's the hat Michael bought last week. And this sentence would be completely correct. Now, relative clauses can be of two types, defining and non-defining. All that we have discussed above relates to defining relative clauses because they are more popular, they are more common in English. That's to say, speakers generally use relative clauses in their speech in order to identify something. But there are non-defining relative clauses as well, which have certain differences from defining ones. Let's explore each of the types and see the features. A defining or identifying or restrictive relative clause, so three names that it has in different grammar resources. First, gives necessary information. This information must be present in the sentence in order to make it complete and in order for this sentence to be fully understood by the listener. It is essential to the meaning of the main sentence. So the information that is contained in the relative clause cannot be omitted. So the sentence will be semantically incomplete, will have an incomplete meaning in this situation. It is not put in commas. So in case of a defining relative clause, there is no comma before the relative pronoun that begins it, and no comma at the end of the relative clause to kind of close it. So you just don't need to use any punctuation and the sentence would remain correct. Now, as discussed above, who, which, and that, the relative pronouns, can be omitted as the object of the relative clause. And if they are the subject, so they cannot be omitted for the reasons discussed above. And an example for that is this sentence, which is taken from my real teaching. So in one of my classes, I have 3 students named Maftuna. And it's a bit of a fun when I call this name and 3 people react. So in order to specify or identify which Maftuna I am talking to, I often need defining relative clauses. So my example is Maftuna, who sits at the first desk, is very active. I have 3 students named Maftuna in my class. As I already said, we don't know which Maftuna if we don't add the information in the relative clause. So by this I mean not the Maftuna who sits at the last desk, not the Maftuna who sits on the left, but the Maftuna who sits at the first desk is very active. This information is necessary and essential because my listener will not understand which Maftuna I am talking about if I omit the relative clause. In a non-defining, or also named non-identifying or non-restrictive relative clause, the speaker or writer gives extra information. So this information is not essential to the meaning of the main sentence, and therefore if we omit or cross out this information, we can have a sentence with a complete meaning. It is put in commas. There is a comma before the relative pronoun, and there is a comma at the end of the relative clause. This is the requirement of punctuation, and relative pronouns in non-defining relative clauses and as well as relative adverbs cannot be omitted. So they simply have to be there in all the situations, when be they the subject of the relative clause or the object of the relative clause, it doesn't matter. A non-defining relative clause must have its relative pronoun and adverb in place. Relative pronoun that, the universal relative pronoun, cannot be used in non-defining relative clauses. So only who, which, whose, where, when, and why. But no that. So some examples of non-defining relative clauses. Shahnoza, who I have known for a year, is a very responsible student. Now, this is about the same class of students, and in it I have only one student named Shahnoza. So the meaning of the sentence is clear without the relative clause. The relative clause gives extra information. My purpose of saying this sentence is that Shahnoza is a very responsible student. Who I have known for a year just gives some extra information that I can easily omit. So I crossed the word that on this slide, meaning that it is impossible because this is a non-defining relative clause. And see, there is a comma before who and there is a comma after year, which shows that the relative clause is non-defining. One more example, my ESL teacher, who came to Germany in 1986, likes to ride his mountain bike. So that is impossible. It's a non-defining relative clause. Commas before who and after 1986 show this. And who refers to the person. So only who is the possible relative pronoun here. The heavy rain, which was unusual for the time of the year, destroyed most of the plants in my garden. So same thing, that is impossible, which is a relative pronoun that refers to things. Rain is a thing, yeah. So after the word rain and after the word year, there are commas showing that this is extra information. The main purpose in saying this sentence is that the rain destroyed the plants in my garden, and not the fact that the rain was unusual for the time of the year. This is just extra information. I'm going to Italy, where my brother lives. So there's only one Italy in the world, and we do not need to identify which Italy my brother lives in. There's only one. So it's only a non-defining relative clause that we can give the extra information about Italy in. So there's a comma that goes before the relative pronoun where, and no comma, no closing comma, because there's a full stop. The sentence ends at this point. And one more specific situation is that if we have the verb to be followed by a gerund or a past participle, we can omit both relative pronoun and auxiliary if we want. Again, we can leave them where they are, or we can omit them. Let's view several examples. So what is that man who is standing by the gate? We have a relative pronoun who. We have the verb to be in its present tense, which is, and we have the ing form of the verb to stand. So this is the situation when we can omit who is and get who is that man standing by the gate. And this sentence is correct. She was wearing a dress which was covered in blue flowers. So which is the relative pronoun referring to a thing, the dress. The past tense form of the verb to be was, and ed form, which is the past participle of the verb to cover. So we can omit which was in this situation. She was wearing a dress covered in blue flowers. And the last example is anyone that is caught writing on the walls will be expelled from school. So relative pronoun that is followed by the verb to be in its present tense, that is. Caught is the past participle form of the verb to catch. It is irregular. So this is again the case for us to omit, when it's possible to omit the relative pronoun and the verb to be. Anyone caught writing on the walls will be expelled from school. So this version is also correct. So this was our little excursion into the world of relative clauses. So I hope it has clarified certain dark spots. And thank you for your attention. So hope to meet you again.